Now, my next guest, well, you're going to love her. She's hugely popular on Goldster, and her words will resonate like a melody for those of us who are interested in nutrition, which is a huge part of fitness and making our well-being at its peak. And that is Claudia Le Feuvre. She is our nutritional therapist and eating psychology coach. She has 16 years clinical experience helping clients with a wide range of health concerns. Claudia lectures at the British College of Nutrition and Health and Nutritional Healing Foundation. She joined Goldster at the beginning and runs classes every Wednesday and Friday. And she is very passionate about making nutrition fun, inspiring, and practical. And she has definitely helped transform hundreds of people's health by boosting their nutrition. Claudia, are you there?
Hi, Lee. Thank you so much. Hi, everyone.
Wonderful. Wonderful to see you. So what are you going to be covering for us today?
Today, we're going to give a little bit of an overview about bones, muscles, and energy levels, just all supporting us to prevent falls.
Fantastic. And stick around, everyone, because Claudia's got an offer at the end. So exciting. I will join you afterwards for questions. So any questions anyone has, please put them in the chat, and Claudia and I will go through them at the end. All right, everybody, take care.
Well, first of all, welcome, and thanks so much to James for such a great session. And, it's amazing as well how nutrition can play a role in looking after our bones and muscles. So if we're putting in the effort to exercise, just even some small changes can make a really big difference to how our bones and muscles are developing. And really, we want to be getting ourselves into what's known as an anabolic state, where we're building our muscles and we're building our bones, which is the opposite of catabolic. And so often as we get older, our bones can start to, as many people discover, osteopenia, osteoporosis. And I always think about it's a little bit like when we suddenly look down at our shoes that we wear every day and we suddenly notice the heel has gone down. And it can come as a little bit of a shock if we have bone density measured, and if suddenly we realize that we've got osteopenia or osteoporosis, because it's not very symptomatic at the beginning. And what we need to remember and realize is that the skeleton is actually, our bones are not inert. We are a very metabolically active. All our bones are constantly remodeling, repairing. And we've got two main cells in our bones. We've got osteoblasts that build our cells, and we've got osteoclasts that break down the bone. So I always remember it by B for build and C for catastrophe. And so what we want to be doing is stimulating their osteoblast activity. Now, what happens with menopause is that as our estrogen levels fall off that cliff, that can stimulate the osteoclast activity. So it can stimulate the further breakdown of the bones. And this is why many people argue the case for HRT, for example, why HRT can be supportive for bone health. But there are actually other things that we can be doing, other nutrients, other ways of building our bones. So number one, we want to be reducing inflammation. Overall, if there was one thing we should do for our bones, that is, we would be reducing inflammation, because inflammation drives the osteoclast as well. So we know that, for example, when we drop in our estrogen levels, that stimulates inflammation in the body. A hot flush is an inflammatory state, for example. So that drives inflammation. The inflammation drives the osteoclast. And so we want to look at calming down the inflammation in our bodies. And we can do that by bringing in all our dark green leafy veg, all multicolored, the rainbow colors of veg as well. And of course, reducing sugar, reducing alcohol, making sure we're having quality protein, oily fish, nuts and seeds. Mediterranean diet is a good general approach as a rule of thumb, but there are specific nutrients that can be very, very helpful with our bones health. And I know that most of the Goldster members here take vitamin D supplements. And I hope that generally you are, especially as we're coming into the winter months. So it is generally recommended for people to take vitamin D supplements. And vitamin D is very helpful for the body to assimilate calcium. Okay, so we need vitamin D for calcium to be absorbed. Then we need to make sure we're getting enough calcium in our diets. So I know the go-to for calcium, everyone thinks dairy. And okay, yes, dairy is a very, very good source of calcium. But if dairy doesn't agree with you, there are many other sources. And really my most favorite source of calcium are the sardines with the little bones. Tin sardines, for example, or in a glass jar from a health store, in oil or brine, with not tomato sauce, but in oil or brine. Those little bones are very, very high in calcium, very easy to assimilate calcium. And there's a really fantastic calcium calculator that you can use that Ben is very kindly going to share. He's going to put the link there. Thank you so much, Ben. He's putting it there, calcium calculator, and he's just going to give us a quick show. So this is a great online calculator that you can use. And all you do is first of all, you put in your supplement. If you're taking a calcium supplement, how much you're putting in, or how many 500 milligrams of calcium. Oh, 12 would be rather a lot, Ben, just as an example. Yeah. Wow. Okay. And then you're just putting how much milk you're having, how much yogurt, cheese, for example, the classic sources of calcium, cream, dessert. But then it goes on to the vegetables. That's brilliant. Thanks. Yeah. So we've got meat, fish. So I know we've got the sardines there, eggs, for example, beans, lentils. Just put in how many portions a week you're having on average, and it will show us if you're having enough calcium combined in your diet. Nuts and seeds are also an excellent source of calcium. Look at there, you can see the almonds are 75 milligrams. So almonds definitely the highest source of calcium out of the nuts and seeds. But it's going to give you a good idea if you're having enough calcium in your diet. So thanks so much for that, Ben. Another key nutrient, so we've got vitamin D, we've got calcium, we've also got vitamin K. Now, vitamin K is very, very hard to have through your diet. It's really produced by the bacteria in our guts. So the only way to guarantee you're getting enough vitamin K is to take a supplement. And what vitamin K works in synergy with vitamin D and calcium, and it helps make sure that calcium is deposited into the right parts of the bone. So, for example, people with arthritis can sometimes develop bone spurs, which can be very, very painful. But vitamin K can help prevent the formation of bone spurs. Sometimes people worry about calcium supplements if they're going to cause calcium deposits in areas that aren't wanted. Vitamin K prevents that happening. So vitamin K is a very important synergistic nutrient to have alongside the calcium and the vitamin D. And the best form of vitamin K is something called MK7, MK-7. That's what you would want. But you can often get bone supplements that combine all three together. And I do get asked a lot as well about forms of calcium. My preferred form, the most bioavailable, the most easy to assimilate form of calcium is something called calcium citrate or calcium malate. Now, I know the NHS prescriptions are calcium carbonate, which is okay. It's just slightly harder for the body to assimilate. So you just would need to make sure, hopefully you've got enough stomach acid, you've got good stomach acid levels to make sure that you're really getting the benefits of that calcium, the calcium carbonate. So those are the specific nutrients. Alongside that, we've got the omega-3 fatty acids. Are you eating your oily fish and your nuts and seeds? Because they can have such a protective effect. Also reducing inflammation. So that they'll be working in many different mechanisms. Now, as well for the bones, and obviously this is mainly for the muscles as well. We think when we need to have enough protein in our diets. And as a general rule of thumb, I always say just make sure every time you eat, you include some protein. Because if we become protein deficient, if we're not eating enough protein, it's going to be hard for the lean muscle to layer up. And protein is also an essential component of bone development. So we need to make sure we're eating enough. So sources of protein are, for example, eggs, meat, fish, nuts, seeds, tofu. And of course, getting enough protein can be more challenging for vegans. But this is where it really is important to prioritize this and to make sure you're getting enough. Collagen is another building block of the bones. So we need to make sure we're getting enough collagen in. And as we spoke about, I don't know if you were here for the Shine On event last week, but the collagen levels can again plummet with that drop of estrogen. So we need to make sure that we're getting enough collagen, and we can do that through our chicken stocks and bone broth. But a lot of people take collagen supplements, especially for hair, skin, and nails, but they are also a fundamental building block for our internals, for our digestive tract, and also for our bones. And there's an offer that we can share with you at the end for Correctico collagen. In terms of looking after our bones as well, there's actually some really interesting research coming out about prunes. Prunes of all things, prunes helping to support bone density. But the studies at the moment show are based on quite a large number of prunes. There's studies that have shown that prunes are really helping reverse the drop in bone density is 9 prunes a day. So I've shared interviews with the researchers of these studies, and they are now looking at lower numbers. But even if you could get a couple of prunes onto your breakfast cereal or your porridge in the morning, every little bit helps. So, and watch this space, because I'm sure there'll be new studies coming out saying 3 prunes a day or 2 prunes a day, which can be a lot more manageable for the digestive tract. We need to make sure we're looking after our digestion, that we're able to assimilate all the good stuff, of course. And this is where on Goldster, for example, we run 6-week digestion courses on all, as we voyage through the entire digestive system, to make sure that we really are supporting our bodies in the best way we possibly can. So that's like an overview of the bones. We want to reduce inflammation. We want to make sure we're getting our calcium, vitamin D, vitamin K. We want our good fats. We want enough protein, and we want to support digestion. For the muscles, when we exercise, it's kind of like a little magazine here. We tear the muscle and then it rebuilds. And that is the process of rebuilding, of gaining lean muscle. And it's so important. And building our core strength. I mean, I always say we can all trip, but it's whether you fall as a result of the trip. And having that core strength can really help, and doing everything we can to build that lean muscle. And the way that when the muscle tears, it rebuilds by using what's known as these branched chain amino acids, which come from the protein that we eat. So we want to make sure that we are providing our bodies with enough protein to help with that process. And then thirdly, we were looking at energy. So we want to make sure we've got enough energy to be able to work out and do James's classes, and just to get more out of life. So the first things I look at with energy is blood sugar levels. Are we on a stable, good energy level, or are we up and down on this blood sugar roller coaster of highs and then absolute crashes? You know, if you think about your day, how do you wake up in the morning? Have you got some va-va-voom, or are you ready to go, or are you exhausted in the mornings? And there are different types of fatigue and there are different types of energy. And I don't really have time to go into all of it today, but it's safe to say that balancing our blood sugar is a really good place to start. So we can do that by including some protein every time we eat, making sure we're getting good quality fiber in our diet, cutting out on the sugar, cutting out on the alcohol, just getting us onto a more even keel without those highs and lows. And by lows, I'm talking about when you get a bit hangry, where you're hungry and angry at the same time, and you can get irritable and lose concentration, heart palpitations, headaches, those kind of symptoms. That feeling that, gosh, did someone say chocolate biscuits, or do I need another coffee? And we need to get you off that. So you can start with breakfast, have a mid-morning snack if you need it, lunch, and an afternoon snack, and then an early-ish dinner, just to help give your body continuous nutritious energy. Then we'd also, from an energy point of view, we're also looking at nutrients. Have you got enough iron? Are you making sure you're not anemic? Low B12 can be absolutely, if having a diagnosis of low B12 can be absolutely life-changing, because low B12 is exhausting. And many people have mistaken the onset of cognitive decline, Alzheimer's, thinking they've got multiple sclerosis, and it can turn out to be low B12. And low B12 can be a problem as we get older, especially for patients who are taking omeprazole and medication for reflux, even Gaviscon. It coats the stomach lining and it can really impair our assimilation of B12, which is vital for energy. So if you're on any of these medications, it's really worth asking your doctor if you could have a test every 6 months or so, just to check your B12 levels, just to check they're not going low. And with any of these blood tests, it's always trend is your friend. So it's looking at regular markers. And when we did a few weeks ago on one of the Goldster Master classes, we talked about hair, skin, and nails. And do you remember the amazing trichologist who joined us? And he was talking about iron and iron levels. And to be counted as anemic, it's basically 10 milligrams or under, your levels of 10 or under. But to have optimal hair function, he was mentioning, you need to be in the range of 40 to 60. So there's a huge spectrum here. And keeping our iron levels topped up, but not overly, you wouldn't want to go over 120, but this is where knowing your numbers can make a really big difference. You know where you are, and obviously ways to increase your iron. For example, vegetarian ways, the non-heme ways are, for example, apricot, spinach, lentils, beans. However, not everyone can convert the non-heme iron very easily in their bodies. So some people do better with heme iron, which is the red meat that's so famous, isn't it, for iron levels. If you need to take iron supplements, I really recommend that you go for the gentle iron for digestive issues, to prevent constipation. The technical name is bisglycinate iron, bisglycinate iron. So yes, so that's checking your nutrients is very, very important. And then in third thing in terms of energy, and last thing that I'm going to mention here, is just making sure that you've tested your thyroid, your hormones. Ask your GP to investigate if your energy has suddenly crashed a little bit. So Lee, I think that was everything that I wanted to mention.
Fantastic. Let me just come back on and join you, and our magical Ben will pop me on screen, and here I am.
There we go. So there was just one tip, which is not at all nutrition related, but I really recommend investing in some snow boots.
Love a snow boot.
They're beautiful. Usually they're fur lined or obviously faux fur, but they've got really good rubber soles. And the last thing we want to do is be slipping on ice or
yes, they've got good grip, haven't they?
Really good grip.
Yes,
It's
and
a
they're very
good
cozy.
investment. Yeah, good investment.
A good grip and very cozy. What's not to love? Okay, so everyone, thank you for staying with us here today. And I know some of you have engaged in the chat. So Claudia, here's a question for you from Jane. I have arthritis in my thumb joints, which flares up and then calms down. Are there any foods I need to cut out, please? Any help?
Yes. So it depends which joint it's in the thumb. If it's rheumatoid arthritis, then cutting down on the nightshade family could be very, very helpful, because the nightshades can trigger flare-ups. So the nightshades are potatoes, aubergines, tomatoes, and peppers. And what I would recommend is you cut them all out. I know that sounds hard because it's they're staples, aren't they?
Yeah,
Cut them all out for 10 days, just 10 days, and then bring them in one at a time, 5 days apart. And just notice what you notice. And you may find, for example, that peppers trigger them, but you're okay with tomatoes.
And would it also be the quantities? You may be able to have a smaller amount than you initially thought without a flare up. Because I know when I was trying low FODMAP, it was small quantities of certain things I can have, but larger quantities I couldn't. So I could tolerate a little bit.
I understand what you're saying, Lee, but a rheumatoid arthritis is autoimmune, so it's slightly different.
Yes. Yeah.
So I would just clear it completely, all of them.
Yeah.
So you can start to see the wood for the trees, and then by all means you can experiment. So you might find then you're fine with green peppers, but not the chilies.
Not chilies.
Yes. It can be you can get very, very specific.
Yes. Okay. Really helpful. Now you mentioned prunes. Someone just saying prunes good for calcium, and then someone else said, will they spike your blood sugar though?
Yes, so you've got to be careful. I definitely wouldn't eat them on their own, but if you were having them with porridge and nuts and seeds, what you're doing is the sugar that's contained within the prunes is being encased with the protein and the fiber, which is going to slow the release of sugar down. But it's a good point, Lee, and I wouldn't recommend a large amount of prunes to someone who's pre-diabetic or diabetic.
Right. Okay. And a few people talking about sardines. So I know you love sardines, don't you? You love recommending sardines, and you got me into sardines. Actually, I hated them before you kept mentioning them, and now I'm actually quite a sardine lover, but not in tomato. That's because it's a nightshade.
It's because the tomato sauce can be acidic, and
yes.
most people buy sardines in tins, and yes. The acidity from the tomatoes can cause some of the chemicals from the tin to leach into the sauce. But also, actually, it's something I didn't quite venture into today, but pH balance is important for our bone health, because the blood needs to maintain a certain pH at any time, but this is a critical function within the body. And if we're becoming too acidic, then calcium is very, very alkaline, and it will be leached from the bones and put into the bloodstream, because that is the overriding priority, maintaining the pH levels of the blood. So this is why moving towards a more alkaline way of being, which would involve eating sardines without the tomato sauce.
Without tomato sauce. Okay. Susan was saying, does vitamin K thin the blood? I take a blood thinner tablet.
Oh yes, with blood thinner tablets, and actually with any supplement, please, or for anyone, please always check with your doctor or pharmacist. But with blood thinner tablets, yes, you wouldn't want omega oils, you wouldn't supplement, and you certainly wouldn't want vitamin K. So it's please always check that this is the right thing for you.
Yes, absolutely. And Sue's just saying, can vitamin K reduce bone spurs? Some bone was removed a couple of years ago, but some was too deep to be safely removed, and it was attached to the dura, and the surgeon had already had to remove some of the dura and use the subcutaneous fat to plug the gap. I was flat on my back for 48 hours. So the question is, gosh, Sue, I'm sorry to hear that. That sounds tough. So the question is, can vitamin K reduce bone spurs?
Prevention is always easier than I'm not
Right.
sure. I wouldn't want to make that claim.
Yes. Okay.
But it can certainly, the studies at the moment are showing it's helpful for prevention.
For
So
prevention. Okay. Yeah, but not necessarily reduction. Okay. Rather than prunes, would prune juice suffice?
no, because the sugar, if
Right.
you're eating the prunes, you're going, that actually prunes are very, very nutrient dense, and they're also very high in fiber. And we're not sure yet which element of the prunes. Well, we think it's actually one of the flavonols, one of the antioxidants within the prunes that's so helpful. But I
Okay.
don't know that that is necessarily in the juice.
Right. Okay. Gillian saying, what did Claudia say about taking calcium carbonate, please?
So calcium carbonate can be slightly harder for the body to assimilate than other forms of calcium. But I know that a lot of people take it because of it's what's given to them on the prescription. So the only thing is just to try and make sure that you've got enough stomach acid, that that your digestive system is working properly.
Yeah.
As
Okay.
good as it can
Wonderful.
be.
Sarif's just saying, is Guinness good for increasing iron, or is that an old wives' tale?
Yeah, it definitely had the folic acid, didn't it? Um, yeah,
How
I'm
does
not
that
sure
weigh
about
against it being alcohol,
oh
though?
yes,
What's
I'm not sure. I'm not sure about this, Lee. I think
the...
there are other ways.
there are probably ways that have more benefits than the Guinness. Okay.
Yeah, like
Um,
a nutritional yeast is quite a good form of B12, vegan B12, because it's just so challenging for vegans, can be,
yes.
to get enough B12.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah. Someone just saying, Doug was saying, I have long COVID after serious hospitalization and serious pins and needles in my feet. Any options regarding diet that may help?
So this is about rebuilding his immune system, reducing inflammation. I would definitely test your B12 levels, because B12 absolutely influences the whole pins and needles and the nervous system. One of the symptoms of B12 deficiency can be pins and needles.
Gosh,
Um,
really?
yeah, so Doug, I'd go for like an MOT, just where you're at with all your different nutrient status. Ask your doctor to give you a blood test. Test your vitamin D as well. Ask them to do that. They don't do it very often, but ask for vitamin D, B12, iron, folic acid, everything that you can,
Yeah.
and then start rebuilding your system.
Yeah. I hope that helps, Doug. Noreen just saying, choosing vitamin D supplement on iHerb site. Now, I know the iHerb site is one you recommend. It's
Yeah.
very confusing. Are drops better, and what size, please?
Okay, well, like the normal dosage that we recommend here on Goldster is 1000 IU a day. So just be a little bit careful about iHerb for vitamin D, just because iHerb has a fantastic American brands, but some of the American dosages are a little bit higher. So a standard regular dose for vitamin D is 1000 IU. Drops are great. Drops are great. Sprays are great because they bypass the digestive system.
Mm-hmm.
So I've had many clients who are very vitamin D deficient. They're taking the supplements and they're not getting their levels up. We give them a spray and it seems to help, seems to make a difference.
Fantastic. Wonderful. Well, Claudia, as always, it's been fabulously informative and a joy to see you. You're a regular on these events, aren't you? Because nutrition is such a huge part of practically every subject. So thank you so much. And thank you, everyone, for your questions today. And Claudia, I will see you at the end.
Thank you so much, everyone.